Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold and Beautiful Always channel. Brooke rejected Nick's proposal right away after Ridge said 7 words to her. The delicate bubbles in the pale gold champagne rose like ephemeral hopes, and the crystal flute seemed dangerously cold in Brooke's hand. Nick knelt in front of her on his living room's faded Persian rug, the same rug where she had sought refuge with Liam months prior following the storm. Nick's eyes now held a universe of love and anxious expectation, surrounded by the flickering warmth of the hearth and the gentle glow of lamplight. The horrific amnesia that had erased Ridge Forrester from her memory like chalk from a slate and the Italian accident had all faded into a tolerable background hum. She recovered steadily. Her environment felt safe, genuine, and incredibly loved after being meticulously reconstructed around Nick's constant presence. In the confusing aftermath, he had served as her safe haven, her anchor, and her interpreter of a past she was unable to access. A figure from a tragic play she had once watched but could no longer remember the narrative of. Ridge's scary specter, the man whose name had once caused dread, had vanished into a far-off, almost academic concept. Brooke had found serenity in Nick's cocoon, which was full of profound and well-earned affection, awful puns, and quiet understanding. Real tranquility. The type that becomes deeply ingrained in the bones. Brooke, Nick said, his voice full of passion, his hand quivering a little as he held hers. With the appearance of a promise fulfilled, he delved into his pocket and pulled out a little velvet box. From the moment you walked back into my life, battered but still fighting, even before Italy, even before the accident stole parts of you I wish I could give back, you've been my everything. You choosing me, after Liam, felt like the universe finally aligning. And then, losing you, even for those terrifying moments, then finding you again but finding parts of you lost, it only cemented what I knew. He opened the package. With a large diamond surrounded by 2 smaller, deep blue sapphires that resembled captured slivers of twilight sky, the ring was exquisite and one of a kind without being overt. He muttered, "It reminded me of your eyes," his own eyes gleaming. He inhaled steadily and said, "Deep, beautiful, holding storms and stars. Brooke Logan. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend every single day proving how much I love you, how cherished you are, how home you are to me? Be my wife. Build this life, our life, together. Whole." Brooke's eyes filled with tears, obscuring Nick's sincere, cherished face and the lovely ring. It was flawless. It fulfilled all of her desires. The empty space where Ridge had been felt more like freedom than a loss. Wholeness was here with Nick. Acceptance. A love unencumbered by a past she couldn't recall and naturally shied away from, one that was based on the present. A jubilant yes formed on her lips, ready to explode forth as her heart grew. She parted her lips, a bright smile starting to appear. The moment was shattered like fallen crystal by the sharp, persistent rap on the flat door. Nick winced, a look of annoyance appearing on his face. With his eyes fixed on hers, he said, "Ignore it," hoping the interruption would go away. However, the banging returned, this time more forceful, urgent, and demanding rather than requesting. An icy tendril twisting through the warmth, Brooke felt an odd jolt of discomfort. Nick sighed, exasperation and pragmatism at odds. He squeezed her hand and muttered, "Hold that thought," before standing up. His stance changed from that of a helpless lover to that of a protective protector as he approached the door. Her yes hung in the heated air as Brooke watched, the ring shining on the coffee table, the champagne flute she had forgotten in her hand. Ridge Forrester's heated, storm-cloud presence immediately filled the tiny sanctuary as Nick opened the door. The broken man in the Italian hospital didn't look like him. Yes, he was older and his eyes were more worn out, but he still had a ferocious, almost frantic resolve that burned inside of him. With a physical intensity, his eyes moved over Nick, completely ignoring him, and fell on Brooke. The old, primordial anxiety flared for a moment before being smothered by the concrete reality of Nick by her side and the ring sitting on the table, and she automatically drew back on the sofa. Nick's icy voice, "Ridge, blocked his way. The order, which was given after months of shielding Brooke from the sight of this man who only made her feel worse, was unequivocal: you weren't invited. Get out. Now. Ridge remained still. He stared at Brooke with dark, blazing eyes. His voice was harsh and low, quivering with an intensity that Brooke couldn't identify but could feel deep within her. I only need a minute, he murmured. His final words to Nick were a challenge, a plea, and a warning all combined into one: just 1 minute with her. Alone. Please, Nick. For her sake. Nick tightened his jaw. For her sake. Seeing you terrifies her. You know that. Whatever you have to say it in front of me, or leave. Ridge's eyes returned to Brooke. For a brief moment, the intensity subsided and was replaced by a deep, agonizing sadness. Brooke, he whispered, lowering his voice to a near whisper that managed to break the tension. With a dismissive, agonizing gesture, he asked Nick, do you remember anything? Anything at all? Before the accident? Before him? Brooke's throat tightened as she shook her head. No, she said in a whisper. The direct words, nothing about you. Nothing good, were the result of the reality that Nick had painstakingly and carefully assisted her in accepting. You scare me. Please go. Ridge winced like he had been smacked. The grief grew, then solidified into something else. Something final, something desperate. He ignored Nick's cautionary palm on his chest and took a half step forward. His frightful gaze was fixed on Brooke's eyes. He made no pleas. He was not angry. He uttered only 7 words. With the silent, devastating accuracy of a knife piercing directly into the center of her lost soul, 7 words were delivered. Hope's first word was Dada, not Mama. Time paused. The fire was crackling. Nick's gasped breath. Outside, the sounds of the city are faint. The fragile flute that Brooke was holding. Everything vanished. Not only did the 7 words land, they exploded. The huge, black space where Ridge Forrester had been deleted exploded inside Brooke's head. Not yet, there wasn't a torrent of recollections. The manufactured darkness that Nick's haven had devolved into was pierced by a single, dazzling bolt of visceral, undiluted truth. A reality so personal, so particular, so completely unspoken that it slipped past conscious memory and hit right at the heart of her identity as a mother. I hope. Her daughter. Even if its roots were unclear, the name conveyed warmth and a strong, enduring affection that she did felt. First words. A turning point. Holy. Permanently etched on a mother's heart. Dada. Not Mama. The pain. Oh, that moment's remembered, illogical, intensely personal sting. Not dissatisfaction with her child, but the intense, possessive little pain that every mother experiences when the child they carried, gave birth to, and fed choose to take the other parent's name first. The deep love that underlies it all, the faux indignation, and the light-hearted rivalry. Nick was unable to know this information. Though not this, he was aware of Hope. Not that particular, intimate memory's unadulterated, emotional richness. This was not history extracted from a shared story or a photo album. This was an actual experience. Her personal experience. Ridge's own experience. Only the two of them, the parents at that time, shared it. The emptiness screamed, not simply burst. The Forrester mansion's sunny nursery was the scene of a fast-paced, chaotic explosion of images, sensations, and emotions. Hope, extending chubby arms, little and lovely in her cot. As the clear, sweet cry of Dada filled the room, Ridge's younger, unfathomably handsome face was illuminated with triumphant, devoted excitement. Her own fake pout, the amusement beneath it, the rightness of their small family unit at that very instant. The man grinning next to her was inseparable from her strong love for her child. Ridge. Not a specter to be feared. A forgotten page without a name. Her spouse. Her child's father. The man whose presence was as necessary as breathing, whose joy at that moment reflected hers. The intricate, intense, agonizing, and long-lasting love struck her like a physical blow, sweeping away the carefully crafted tranquility of the previous few months. With a sound like a dying dream, the champagne flute broke on the wooden floor as it slipped from her numb fingers. It was not heard by Brooke. She was looking at Ridge, but she could now see him. Seeing him, really. The man who knew the most private and profound parts of her soul, aspects that even amnesia couldn't totally erase, was not the stranger from Italy. It was a cellular recognition, not an intellectual one. Primordial. She felt a dam burst inside her. No, came out as a stifled murmur, ripped from somewhere beyond memory. Her palm went to her lips as her eyes widened in horror, not at Ridge but at the realization and the terrible betrayal of the life she had created with Nick, a life that was abruptly exposed as a delicate, lovely delusion based on the lack of this essential fact. She turned her gaze from Ridge's face, which was marked with anguished love and desperate hope, to Nick. Nick's face was a mask of dawning, tragic awareness as he remained motionless, his palms still extended towards Ridge. He witnessed it. Witnessed the flow of memories, the brightness of recognition, and the disintegration of everything he had laboriously constructed in Brooke's eyes. The sapphires on the table like lifeless, frigid stars, and the ring appeared to taunt him. He had provided her with security, stability, and love based on the present, but Ridge had just dug into the past and extracted a truth so powerful and particular to them that it instantly destroyed Nick's entire future. With a stutter, Brooke got up and moved away from Nick, the couch, and the ring. Her legs were like if they were made of water. With tears running freely, she backed towards the window and shook her head. The tears were tears of shock, anguish, and an overwhelming, unwanted recall. No, she repeated, more forcefully this time, her voice quivering with pain. Oh God. Ridge. It was a recognition. A submission to the reality that his 7 words had sparked. She turned to face Nick, a deep, painful apologies and a fear that reflected his own in her eyes. The words Nick. I. Fell flat. How was she going to explain the tsunami that had just destroyed her world? In what way could she express how his proposal, his lovely ring, and his secure love now seemed like a betrayal of her own self-discovery? Then she coughed out, I remember. I remember him. She made no mention of her love for Ridge. She didn't verbally reject Nick. Ridge was no longer a void, she said simply, describing the seismic upheaval that had taken place. He was genuine. Memory was him. He was a part of her, part of hope, part of a history that had reclaimed its hold with violence. Nick's face fell flat. A barren wasteland was left behind as the love, hope, and future he had just imagined evaporated. He recognized the rejection in the overwhelming truth of her recalled bond with Ridge, not in her words. He let his hand fall limp to his side. The struggle, the defensiveness, was gone. He was only a man whose entire world had fallen apart in 7 heartbreaking sentences. Between the two men, Brooke's eyes flickered, the one whose love had been her haven but was now the cause of her intolerable shame, and the one whose very presence, unlocked by a shared memory, had turned into an unquestionable, terrifying force. The broken glass at her feet, the ring on the table, and the champagne seeping into the rug were all reminders of a future destroyed. Brooke gasped, I can't. As he retreated farther, desperate for air and space to get away from the crushing weight of the truth and the destruction in Nick's eyes. She gazed at Ridge with a stunned, appalled recognition rather than fear. You did this. With his own eyes moist, Ridge hesitantly stepped in her direction. "I had to, Brooke," he said in a heartfelt whisper. "I had to make you remember us." However, Brooke wasn't prepared for us. She was completely overwhelmed by the abrupt reappearance of them. She turned, frantically reaching for the door handle, having to escape the wreckage of Nick's proposal and the horrifying reappearance of Ridge's claim. "No," she said. She didn't refuse. The only love she believed she knew was shattered by 7 words that reached into the emptiness and dragged her forgotten heart back into a history from which she could no longer escape, and she just went, leaving behind the broken glass, the shining, rejected ring, and the broken man kneeling amid the debris. The nuclear blast of a single, resurrected memory destroyed Nick's proposal, not rejected it. A history that would not be buried returned with a roar, and the peace was gone. Taylor loses Ridge to Brooke. Brooke Logan, armed with nothing but heartbreak, determination, and that signature blend of sensuality and sincerity, decided she had enough of watching from the sidelines while Taylor Hayes wore Ridge Forrester's ring and played the part of the ideal, stable partner. It happened like a storm rolling in from a clear blue sky, silent at first, then swift, fierce, and irreversible. No more weeping, no more waiting, no more respectful quiet. Brooke was determined to reclaim what she felt had always been hers, Ridge's heart, his loyalty, and his future, and she would use every tool at her disposal, including the truth, because, despite all the passion and suffering, she was certain that Ridge didn't love Taylor as much as he loved her. Not at all. Not very deeply. Not entirely. Thus, on a cool afternoon at the Forrester estate, while Taylor and Ridge were laughing in the garden while drinking wine and shining in the sunlight of her seeming success, Brooke emerged in the doorway, composed but determined, her gaze fixed on Ridge's with a chill that chilled the balmy air. She continued, "We need to talk." Taylor, who immediately saw the change, stood as though to confront her, but Brooke raised a hand. This wasn't a request, it was a statement. "I'm not here to engage in combat. I'm here to be honest." Ridge paused, the glass quivering slightly in his fingers, the smile vanishing from his face as Taylor sneered, "You're still in love with me, and we both know it." With a gentle yet firm voice, Brooke took a step closer. "Because Taylor is safe, you married her. Since she doesn't confront you. Because I offer you passion, but she gives you tranquility. You get fire from me. I provide you with everything you act as though you don't want but keep returning for. Together, you and I have experienced 1,000 lifetimes. We have damaged one another. However, we have also rescued one another. The way you look at me is different from how you look at her. You never have." And silence fell for a long moment. Taylor's face reddened in a mixture of shock and growing anxiety, while Ridge merely looked at Brooke as though he had just seen her clearly after months of not seeing her. Brooke stepped close enough to feel his breath and murmured, "Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me, and I'll leave." Ridge remained silent. He remained still. In that heartbreaking moment, Taylor saw the fire in Ridge's eyes that only Brooke could extinguish and the crack in his carefully crafted loyalty. His silence was its own response. Ridge reached for Taylor as if to explain, to relieve the hurt, but she pulled aside, her voice trembling with rage. "You've already made your choice," Taylor murmured quietly and brokenly. "No. Keep your hands off of me. You vowed that this time was different." Taylor turned and left, leaving Ridge standing in the ruins of his uncertainty, her eyes welling with tears. Brooke placed a hand on his chest and moved to his side, sensitive but not triumphant. She said, "Ridge, come home." And he did.